With less than a week to go until the NBA trade deadline coming your way on Thursday, NBA rumors are starting to heat up, and there's some pretty significant reporting from Shams Charania pertaining to the Sixers and their pursuit of James Harden. You're watching Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Chase Sr., coming at you from the crib and not the Chat Sports studios because, one, I'm off today, but two, we got hit with a snowstorm down here in Dallas. That's where Chat Sports is headquartered, and it's crazy to me. I grew up right outside of Philly, and when a place like Dallas gets hit with an inch of snow, the entire city shuts down. But this is why you subscribe, because whether we're at the Chat Sports studios or at home, we have you covered with all things Sixers. So Shams Charania tweeted this out just moments ago. According to sources, Philadelphia 76ers are expected to pursue Brooklyn's James Harden ahead of the NBA trade deadline on Thursday, and the Nets are now open to discussing a deal. The difference in that reporting as compared to previous weeks, one, it's coming from Shams Charania, who, alongside Woj, the two best NBA reporters out there, and a couple weeks ago, it was reported that the Nets were not open to discussing a deal that would include James Harden going to Philadelphia in exchange for Ben Simmons and a couple of other players and or picks. This is what the article had to say, and we've talked a lot about James Harden here on the channel. I'm cool with doing a player-for-player swap. If Philly sends Ben Simmons to Brooklyn in exchange for James Harden, I think the two-man game between Harden and Embiid could be really exciting. Even though Harden has had a down year, he's lost half a step, and his numbers are down because of that. If you watch him the other night against the Sacramento Kings, 2 of 11 from the floor, he looked gassed. He looked tired. Steve Nash even said that after the game. I think he'd be rejuvenated coming to a place like Philadelphia where he can be one of the top options. And I think alongside Embiid, that fit would work pretty well as long as he's not entirely ball dominant to the level he was with the Houston Rockets. But I'm not giving up Tyrese Maxey, Ben Simmons, and another player like Matisse, Thybulle for James Harden. We have seen Tyrese Maxey this year, in spurts last year as a rookie, and especially since Christmas, really come onto the scene as a legitimate offensive playmaker, a three-level scorer whose exuberance, whose energy, whose offensive output has been very, very impressive, and a key cog in why the Sixers have been one of the hottest teams in the NBA since around Christmas time. I said this on yesterday's show. I'm high on Tyrese Maxey to the point where I think he's Philly's most exciting guard going back to Allen Iverson. And I think with him, you can still win now, even though he's a sophomore player. But while you're able to win with him now, you can also compete in the future years, and it seems as though him and Embiid get along very well, even though Embiid has kind of teamed up with Daryl, Morey, and Doc Rivers in wanting to bring in James Harden. So a lot of stuff to follow here, but here's what Shams had to say in that report. The Philadelphia 76ers and president of basketball operations Daryl Morey had been plotting to wait for the offseason to chase James Harden as a free agent and save Ben Simmons for a potential deal, but they might not have to wait that long after all. With the NBA trade deadline coming up on February 10th, we have you covered with all the coverage pertaining to the Sixers, by the way. 76ers are expected to pursue Harden in the coming days, and the Nets are believed to be open to discussing a deal. Sources with knowledge of the situation tell The Athletic. As for what Brooklyn might be asking for, there's expectation that both the Sixers and Nets will engage in dialogue on a deal around Simmons for Harden, multiple sources say, with Philadelphia holding a chest of role players in Seth Curry, Tyrese Maxey, and Matisse Thybulle that could sweeten a potential package. Still, there's no urgency from Nets officials who have had the steadfast belief that the current core as is has the means necessary for a championship. However, it's believed that an opening exists should an offer elevate the team to make the roster more well-rounded as the franchise pursues a championship. So Harden's numbers, no doubt, are down this year. Lowest points per game total for him going back to 2011-2012. The field goal shooting percentage of 41.5% is the lowest since Harden's rookie year. And with the Nets, KD's currently out. Kyrie can only play in games away from the Barclays Center because of his vaccination status, which is still in question. Joe Harris might be getting a second surgery on that ankle, which makes things kind of interesting from the Nets' perspective. But either way, if you have KD, you have Kyrie, and you have James Harden, we saw in about, 10 games and a couple of playoff games last year that trio is very dangerous, and they can win an NBA championship. But Harden hasn't looked happy this year. Kyrie, of course, is a flake and has said some really weird things. KD out with that knee injury. So could they look to switch up the roster, make some changes, make a trade? There have been a bunch of rumors about Harden wanting out of Brooklyn because he wants to be more of a key component of an offense. Kendrick Perkins saying last week he's talked to people close in Harden's circle who have said Harden wants to go to Philly to team up with Joel Embiid. And of course, the underlying story of all of this, ever since these rumors have really surfaced with Philadelphia and the Houston Rockets when Daryl Morey wanted to trade for Harden, and now with the Brooklyn Nets, is Harden has always been the apple of Daryl Morey's eye. He traded for him when he was running basketball operations in Houston. Harden went on to have, an MVP, multi-all-star career in Houston and was terrific, led the Rockets to a bunch of deep playoff runs, and Harden almost came to Philadelphia last year when he was with Houston. Daryl Morey just didn't pull the trigger at that time in a deal that was rumored to be Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey, Matisse, Thybulle, maybe a pick in there for Harden. Now, you look at the Philadelphia perspective of this. Seth Curry for Josh Richardson was a highway robbery from Daryl Morey, a phenomenal trade, and I think Seth Curry means a lot to this team. But would you rather include him in a deal if that means that you can get Harden and still keep Tyrese Maxey? Potentially. I'm high on Matisse Thybulle. If he can become a competent three-point shooter, he's an all-world defender, and I think come playoff time, he can really, really help you. But would you put him in a deal if that means that you can get Harden and still have a starting five, let's say, of Harden, Maxey, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and maybe you slot back in a Danny Green or a George Niang? Like, that makes the Sixers pretty interesting. So we're going to continue to develop. We're going to continue to talk about this story because this obviously has major implications for the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm going to continue to say, do not include Tyrese Maxey in this deal for James Harden. I don't think that'd be wise. I don't think that'd be smart. I think you could be haunted by Tyrese Maxey balling out for future years to come with the Brooklyn Nets. And then James Harden, I have a lot of concerns about how he ages and how he progresses or goes downhill in his NBA career, because this has never been a guy who's been the most devoted athlete in terms of keeping himself in shape, fine-tuned, and come playoff time, his offensive style has been rendered less efficient because it's predicated on getting contact that he might get and those whistles that he might get in the regular season, but not in the playoffs. But either way, like, you bring in James Harden, it makes Philadelphia very interesting. And right now, Philadelphia's at a point where we're at February 4th, and we're past the midway part of the season, about to go into the All-Star break, and Philadelphia is one game out of the first place spot in the Eastern Conference. Like I said, this is why you subscribe to Philadelphia 76ers Now by Chat Sports. We're bringing you the latest news and rumors, and whether we're at the Chat Sports studios or at home, we have you covered. So hit that red subscribe button down below so you can stay on top of everything going down with this team. Fascinating stuff. Thanks for watching today's show. I'm actually going to the Mavericks-Sixers game tonight. Anything comes from that, I'll be there to see it.